Delighted to have Dr. Gerry Waters back again. It's been a few years and I've been watching you, of course, from a distance and on X and all the rest. And we've both been very busy, but I thought it's time to catch up again. And we had a little preliminary conversation last night. And Gerry, you prefer to be called Gerry, not Dr. Waters, so we'll call you Gerry. When he's crossing the road, it's left, right, and over each shoulder these days because, you know, anything could happen. You've been one of the few brave voices from the medical world to blow the whistle and to warn people and to say don't touch that stuff, and you have been proven correct. You have been vindicated, but unfortunately the mainstream media and the medical council, they're very, very slow to acknowledge that. So how are things going? Just give us a little update on where you're at.
Yeah, well, thank you, Ashley, for inviting me back. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. And I, too, have been watching you. I've been keeping an eye on your progress. I'm very happy with your progress overall. You meet my approval.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we live in a funny world at the moment. You know, just an observation. There's so many people who are sort of beating around the edges of this whole crazy world that we now inhabit. As I say, you're one of the people who are, I believe, doing some really true, honest work in this field. Now, as for where I am, I was just to fill in the people who haven't heard of Gerry Waters, and there's probably, you know, getting on for 8.5 billion people who haven't heard of Gerry Waters on this planet. But the bus driver's son from a corporation housing estate in Drimna, put myself through college totally, absolutely, completely, with a wife and 2 children eventually, living in a 16-foot caravan, a 24-foot mobile home and corporation flats. So I kind of went through the hard way, went straight through college, no hiccups, no problems. Started off working in general surgery and then went into general practice, spent 40 years in general practice as a GP here in Selbridge in County Kildare. Enjoyed every minute of it, loved being a doctor, loved the privilege of being involved in people's lives when the chips were down. Then in 2020, March of 2020, all this rubbish about COVID, this massive virus that was going to kill the world population, was going to kill off 1 in 10, or depending on which liar you believed at the time, you know, whether it was Holohan or whoever, you know, Luke O'Neill, all these people coming out with their prognostications and their prophets of doom. I didn't believe any of it because I was a GP on the front line. I had seen 40 previous winter flus, 40 years of winter flus. I had recognized during the sort of flu type season of November, December, January, February, there was nothing there. And I mean nothing there. It was probably a very mild winter flu, upper respiratory tract infection period. I had no worries that there was a virulent virus out there, and said it to my patients, and said it to the ICGP, my academic body, the people who I paid to keep my thinking straight. This is the crazy thing. I was paying this group of people, the ICGP, to keep my thinking straight. And when I got on to them and said, hey lads, there's nothing here, what's happening? There's no particularly bad virus in the community. There's nothing that needs any special interventions. They ignored me. They didn't give me any answers. I got on to the Department of Health. I got on to whoever I could. I said, like, what's going on? Please correct. I begged them to correct my error in thinking. They didn't. They ignored me. Zilch, nothing, not a sausage. They this is the crazy part of it. Anyway, I continued on and said, yeah, there's no need for masks. There's no need for social distancing. There's no need to collapse the economy. There's no need to close the small businesses. Note, they closed the small businesses, but not the big businesses. The supermarkets, they stayed open, but the local, the hairdressers and the local barbers and the local hardwares all had to close. Like, this is the crazy part of it. Anyway, I refused to go along with it. A guy came in one day and reported me, didn't agree with me obviously, but went back to the medical council, reported me, saying that I was telling him what and eventually turned out to be the truth. The death rate, the average age of people dying was 81.6, getting on for 82. No children were dying, and this was true of Ireland and in Italy, the epicenter of this lie and hoax. So this guy went in, reported me to the medical council in September, the end of August, September 21 or 20, and then eventually when they introduced when they rolled out the gene therapy masquerading as a vaccine. And I said, no way would I inject a messenger RNA into myself or into my children, into my grandchildren. No way would I do that. And then, I said it to everybody. No,
now,
you got to
Gerry,
be
I want to
crazy.
pause you there for a minute because I think it is a good moment, especially now that Joe Duffy has announced his retirement from RTE after 37 years. He's going to hang up the headphones. Let's hope he's not moving on somewhere else. Damage is done. But just to give a flavour of what he was up to and what Liveline were saying about you at this time. And of course, you really were the stick in the spokes of this whole narrative about the deadly virus and this pandemic, and you were ruining it. So this is one of the calls that went into Liveline. Let's just pause up and listen.
5815. Hello, good afternoon, and you're very welcome to Liveline. 51551. Please remember to wash your hands every time you hear that number. Indeed, every time you feel the need to wash your hands, and even if you know the number of times you've washed your hands today, you haven't washed them enough. Maureen Lawler, Maureen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Joe.
You're in Selbridge in County Clare. Why have you in County Kildare? Why have you contacted us?
Well, at the end of yesterday's programme, I only got the end of it. You were talking to a lady about vaccination programme.
Yeah.
And I know you asked her a question about whether a doctor could opt out of the scheme, and she didn't actually answer the question in full. So my question was, can a doctor opt out of the vaccination programme? And if he so does want to do this, should he advise his patients of his decision and direct them to where they could get vaccinated, and maybe even give them a telephone number, because one of the doctors here in Selbridge, is refusing to give the vaccination to anybody. His question was to an elderly couple that went to him on Monday, and I live in a complex where there's a lot of elderly people, was that he wouldn't put a vaccination in an arm that he wouldn't put in his own arm. So he obviously feels strongly about the vaccine. What would worry me then with these people here, and I'm speaking on behalf of about 5 or 6 of them that I know are registered with this particular doctor, and now they don't know where to go because he's refusing to administer the injection.
So I'll just pause it there. But they go on to name you, and I know you were invited onto the show. I was actually looking for the clip, but you put me right on that. So there is no clip because you didn't actually go on the show. Fine. But it was so revealing at the time, and it really shows. I think this is a great piece for the archives to show you the mentality at the time. You, as a doctor with 40 years experience, you couldn't even tell your patients, your clients, listen, there's nothing to worry about, because of the RT brainwashing, because the messaging was so severe. We know by the end of 2020, there were no excess deaths. So that's some kind of funny pandemic. If there were no excess deaths, it was a case-demic through the faulty use of the PCR test. We know that now. But that's what you were up against. Did you know that lady who went on to Liveline?
Yeah, I knew the apartment block that she was in, sort of a kind of an apartments for elderly people. I knew her, so presumably I hadn't met her. Funny, I'd never heard that. I'd never heard that interview. I never heard her before. I knew that she had complained, but I hadn't actually heard that clip. So thanks for that. No, I didn't know her, but I think I had contact with her. I'm sure I had contact with her doing house calls, because I was one of the few GPs who continued to do house calls, well, for the last 10 years. But, prior to that, I was in and out doing house calls, so I would have known. No, I hadn't heard that. Yeah, I don't know what happened after that. Like, what did Joe say or do or?
Oh, let me go back. Do you want to go back and listen to another little bit of it?
Yeah.
Okay,
I wouldn't mind hearing the rest of it.
Okay, let me go back to the shared screen again. Just pressing me buttons. It's not like RTE here, I'm afraid. This is a one-woman production
Just
show.
haven't got enough staff, actually.
You can't find the staff these days. Here we go again.
You can't get good staff.
I would worry that if an elderly person actually fears that their own doctor, who they may have been with for years and trusted the doctor,
Yeah, of course,
that they may feel that, well, should I be questioning this? Should I really receive the vaccine? Because they could go home and make a different decision, and maybe it could affect their life and other people around them. So my question was, can a doctor do this and give such, bad vibes?
And did this doctor, by the way, the doctor is Dr. Gerry Waters in the White Town Clinic in Celbridge, County Kildare, because we've spoken to him, and hopefully we'll be able to speak to him on air if he wishes, but so far he doesn't. But he's told us his position, which I'll read out now in a sec. But you say your friends were told, I will not put this vaccine, this is the doctor, I will not put this vaccine into any person's arm that I won't put into my own arm. But correct. Did he follow up by saying, however, there is Dr. Mary Murphy, for argument's sake, down the road, and she will look after my patients who want the vaccine?
Not at all. That was the whole problem when they questioned, well, if you won't do it, can't do it, I don't want to do it, where can we go? And the answer was, I don't know, you'll have to find out yourselves. The couple in question did ring the HSE afterwards, and they tried to get information. The lady was quite helpful, but she said they hadn't come across this before and that she would have to speak to her supervisor.
They hadn't come across it before. Let's just get your reaction to it now so far. So what do you make? This is the first time you've actually heard this Liveline clip. It's from February 2021. Can I just get your reaction?
I'm remarkably proud of what my stance was then, given how right I was. Given how right I was not to put that messenger RNA into my own arm or my patient's arms, and refusing to be complicit. I'm surprised at my strength to actually not become in some way complicit in it by giving out the name of somebody else who would commit the crime for me. I'm actually thrilled, as it happens, with my response. It is all kind of, there's the fog of time that has actually, I've forgotten what had gone on. But now, in retrospect, I'm so proud that was my response, because I was so right. And when she says maybe they made a different decision, I would hope so. And if they did, they've got a much better chance. If they're the elderly, presumably we're talking about there, they've got a much better chance of being alive today than if they had taken the vaccine, because we all know that the vaccine killed people. Not only killed people, you realize that an awful lot of the deaths were that they were accusing COVID of were in effect COVID vaccine deaths, because they didn't consider you vaccinated until after 2 weeks after the administration. So if you died within 2 weeks of the vaccine, and tens of thousands of people in the world did, they considered you a COVID death rather than a COVID vaccine death. But this is how crazy the lies and the subterfuge and the mendacity was. I'm so proud of myself from then.
Yeah, and you should be. It's beautiful, and that's the thing about the truth. The truth will hold,
Yeah,
and it'll
yeah.
grow, and it keeps its power, it keeps its staying power, and you can pull it out at any time, and it still holds. But the
Well,
lie,
Thank you, Ashling, for bringing that up because I feel so much better,
good,
having
good.
heard that was my stance. That I said,
Mm.
no, I won't give it and I won't be complicit in it. Now, you got to realize that I had also refused to do the PCR test, the stick up your nose.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't even know what was going up the nose. I mean, it was going right up the nose and twisting. And
Yeah,
as Luke
yeah.
O'Neill
The
showed
problem
to
is,
Claire Byrne, six
again,
times he was doing the 666. Anyway, that's another day's story. But
oh,
yeah,
yeah,
what was he even putting up
what
the
I'm saying
nose?
is, I had also refused to act. I personally, or my family, nobody had the polymerase chain reaction test
Yeah,
done, and I sent nobody for it. I refused to send anybody for it because at that stage, this is a year now before February 2021. In March of 20, I had researched the PCR test and found it to be a con and a hoax.
yes,
And that's the truth. And
yeah.
like
And even
everybody
Terry
admits
Mullis
that
called it that.
now,
Yeah. I
So
mean, its
all the
inventor,
diagnosis
who
of
won a
COVID,
Nobel Prize for his creation, Kerry Mullis, warned
yeah,
us against it, and he sadly died in 2019. And you'd
that's
often
right.
wonder,
Yeah, sort of towards the when the whole thing was being introduced. Yeah, it's crazy when you look back on it, Ashling. So to an extent, yeah, I'm so glad that I did what I did, and I'm so proud of it. And the beauty of it is, the truth is not going to change. I'm
no,
not going to be proven wrong now. I'm only going to be proven more right by the day. And this is what brings in the sheer stupidity and incompetence of the medical council. Like, the idiots are leaving it. They're keeping me hanging. Now, you referred to me being kept hanging. Literally, I am hanging because they imposed the death sentence on me. They imposed the death sentence to my medical career. It was capital punishment of my medical career. They imposed a maximum penalty on me by suspending me by the neck, so that my medical career was extinguished. It was suffocated.
mm,
It was gone. They couldn't have. There was no greater punishment they could have imposed upon me. But the idiots, the sheer incompetent idiots, and the advice they get is unbelievable. But they left it long enough for me to be proven totally, completely, and absolutely correct in everything I said. The PCR test was a con and a hoax. There was no relevant, virulent virus there. There was no need for interventions. I got 100% success rate in PCR diagnosed COVID patients. I didn't send them, but other doctors did. I got 100% success rate. I had no sick patients, no dead patients, because I didn't neglect my patients. I examined every one of them. I didn't send them home so they developed a pneumonia. And but as I say, this is the crazy thing. The medical council have left it for over 4.5 years. And now, will we kind of go through it chronologically from here, Ashling?
well, I want to stick with Joe Duffy for a minute, and we'll go back because it is shocking. Like, it is shocking what happened, but I just think we need to kind of go back. Here's February 11th, 2021. I pulled this up. See, I like going back because of all the lies. For journalists, it's a beautiful thing because you know what lies do. They start tripping people up. They start doubling back. They start catching themselves out. That's why the truth is so easy. You can say it, it
Yeah,
flows
yeah.
out. You don't have to watch. You don't have to go, did I say that? Oh, crap, I said that. Now I have to say this. And now I've caught myself. There's none of that. But the beauty for a journalist who wants to go back over everything is it's just one lie after the next. And as we saw with the COVID scam, and that's exactly what it was, a worldwide scam. I think that's what caught people off guard as well, with how big it was.
Yeah.
But there's so many. But here, I just want to pop into this one again. Joe Duffy, because he was paid so much, €350,000, which is a massive amount for a guy. If a guy to just sit and taking phone calls, but he's a gatekeeper. He was managing those phone calls and making sure somebody like you came across as like crazy. The gaslighting was off the charts. And to shut down those dissenting voices and make out like, oh, but where else can they get this life-saving vaccine? Instead of saying, well, he's a conscientious objector. Why? What, instead of asking, is this necessary? Risk-benefit analysis, all of that.
Yeah, but you see, I refused to go on because I'd come across Joe. I was the darling of RTE for 8 or 9 years back in the 90s. I was on Live at 3 and Open House, and with Mary Kennedy and Thelma Mansfield and Sienna Campbell, and so I knew all these people. And I'd met Joe Duffy, and I'd met him, and I realized that, in all honesty, he wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer. And so when they rang me, I said, "Nah," I said, I really wouldn't be interested in talking to Joe. Partly because I knew where he'd be coming from, and partly because I knew he wasn't bright enough to really get what I was trying to say. To understand.
I think he knew exactly. I think he knew exactly what he wasn't allowing on.
I think he actually went along with the propaganda and the lies, but I don't.
I do. I think he knew.
I think he wasn't bright enough. Well, I will defend him insofar as I think he was too thick to actually know what was going on.
That's just his shtick. That's the shtick, because there's no way you can avoid the questions that they avoided. There's not a chance. Ryan Tubridy, Claire Byrne. You can't avoid the questions that they avoided without understanding the story first. So they deliberately omitted asking the obvious questions that they're paid. You see, they're paid the big bucks to avoid those questions and manage the narrative. That's what people have to understand. But here's the Liveline tweet. A hashtag Liveline has learned of a GP in County Kildare who's telling patients that he will not be administering the COVID-19 vaccine to his patients. Dr. Gerry Waters of Whitethorn Clinic, Selbridge, has confirmed to the Prug, I'm going to have to go in here now, 1 second. What's he confirmed to the Prug? Oh yeah, that he is a conscientious objector. But I just wanted to go to, I was looking at the comments then, and I love looking back at the comments. So Kevin McGarin, I used to really like Kevin McGarin. I thought he was so funny.
I don't know who he is. I'd never heard of him.
He's a TV presenter. He's very good and very funny TV presenter. And, should have been the first, because comedians really should have been the first to take the mickey out of it and to be able to poke fun at it. And, it's the disappointment that somebody of his talent, and he's got great talent, would come out and say 10 years of medical training undone by a few months of watching YouTube videos. That's what he posted.
What a condescending, ignorant, stupid thing to say.
Yeah.
He's implying that in effect, my 50 years, or my 50 years. I was in college, in hospital medicine and general practice for 50 years, that it was undone by you watching YouTube. What a condescending, ridiculous thing to say. Yeah, I got to admit, like that's, now he sounds like an idiot.
Well, wasn't that the big surprise out of the whole thing? I thought he'd be one of the guys that would have been the first to stand up, because that was his persona on the TV, that, that he was taking the mickey out of all the stupid stuff. And I thought he would have been one of the first, and yet he came out with that. The disappointment was just immense.
Yeah, but aren't they looking so stupid now, given that they're all so wrong? Like how they must blush with embarrassment when they think back and think how wrong, or maybe I've got the wrong perspective on. Maybe there's such evil in them that having taken the big bucks, that they don't care. But I got to admit, if I'd been so wrong about anything, I'd be very embarrassed.
Well, something that involves, like we're talking 22,500 extra deaths, and that's what we know of, right? That's all we know.
Oh yeah,
Patrick Ewald.
that is not the injured taking in the injured.
Mm.
And you know, some of the people who are injured are going through such a horrific life that I'm sure a lot of them would prefer they were dead, because a lot of it is kind of neuropathies and autoimmune diseases, and you know, constant pain, and not able, like some of the people have had horrific lives, you know, like quite apart from the deaths. And the deaths, how can you describe deaths as being anything but the worst outcome? But when you hear some of the injuries and the pain that people are going through, you know, maybe death isn't the worst outcome, which is an awful thing to say, I know.
Yeah, well, the truth is slowly coming out. I mean, even the mainstream media are beginning to drip it out, but it's very managed. They started with the AstraZeneca, you know, oh, it's AstraZeneca. Now it's about the little bits of Pfizer, little bits here and there, but they are still pretending it's not happening. And it's still, oh, look over there, oh, look over there. And trying to distract us, you know, with all other stories. And the celebrity crew have found something else to virtue signal about. You know, it used to be the vaccines, the so-called vaccines, the bioweapon, that they virtue signaled about. Oh, you know, if you were decent, you'd take that. You know, you don't be a granny killer. Roll up your sleeve for the common good. And we have Rory Cowan there. He said he should be struck off. That's what he said about you.
Well, I was.
Yeah.
But you see, to actually strike me off, I would have had to have a full hearing. In effect, they did the cowardly way. They brought me before the High Court, and Judge Mary Irvine, who in fact, she was actually unbelievably nasty to me. And I've been in, I was the guard doctor here, and I was in court on many occasions for, you know, as a professional witness, and drunk driving charges and many things. And I never heard a judge speak in such condescending terms as she did to me. She'd obviously bought in to the whole COVID hoax, and but she was very nasty to me in the High Court.
Yeah, well, we got to see who's who, and it was shocking. We really, I mean, up to that point, I didn't quite realize how bad it was or how pervasive it was. But there is a network out there, and you know, they know how to keep their jobs, and they know why. Well, we know why they were elevated to certain positions, and you know, it all begins to make sense.
Yeah.
We've got to understand it a bit better over the last few years. But so where is it standing now? Like, you were suspended from practicing medicine for what, 4 years?
Well, yeah, I was suspended for practicing medicine on the 3rd of March 2021. So on the 3rd of March this year, I was 4 years suspended. But then what happened was the single complaint. The complainant decided to withdraw his complaint on the basis that, well, kind of in a number of reasons. One of them was that I was too bloody popular, that in fact I was too well liked in the area, and I was too right, and too many people totally agreed with me. But he also said that he didn't think that the crime or the punishment fitted the crime. And anyway, he withdrew his complaint and wanted to remain anonymous so that nobody would know who he was. That I agreed with, because when I was suspended, with literally given an hour or 2 hours to close my practice, I was dealing with 4 terminal cancer patients, and I was always very good at what I refer to as stage managing death. It was very important, I always felt, that the family be involved in the death in those cancer cases as much as possible, but they could only be involved in it if the patients were kept at home as long as possible, and in conjunction with the terminal care nurses and the the doctor who was available sort of 24 hours a day to intervene. So I was always very, very much involved. I always felt that there were two important events in your life, your birth and your death. And both of them should be managed as well as possible, as you possibly can. Anyway, I had 4 patients who were dying, terminal care. And they were kind of pissed off that I was suspended and not given, like, you'd imagine that they would have come to a compromise and I would have agreed, okay, give me a month to wind it down. And I will not say, I won't say what I believe. I don't know if I would have done that or not, but well, as it happens, in the full hearing of the Medical Council in February, the end of February 2021, they had an independent legal advisor in there who stated that it would be draconian. He used the word draconian to suspend Dr. Waters, or to terminate my career. The legal team suggested we come to a compromise. And I said, the compromise would be that I'd kind of keep my mouth shut for a period, and sort of a compromise, which was kind of against my principles to come to a compromise. But I think I'd made my point at that stage. I was well enough known in Celbridge what I believed. But the Medical Council wouldn't have that. They went against the compromise suggestion of the legal team. J.P. McDowell, a very, well-known legal expert, they went against the independent senior counsel to get my head on a spike, to terminate my career.
And of course, that was terrifying, like for other doctors, and we know how hard it is to be a doctor. It's very, very difficult to even.
It's a hard life. It is a hard life.
Yeah, and so that must have been a real warning shot to other doctors to zip it.
It was, particularly as I was Gerry Waters. I was very well known. I'd been on television, and I was outspoken, and I was strong, and I was, you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't somebody who kind of sat down and took things. I was opinionated, let's just say, in a charitable way. So that, Gerry Waters was not somebody that you would trifle with. And they knew what they were doing. They knew exactly what they're doing. But as I say, the sheer stupidity of them to leave it. They should have done me, and kind of. They just suspended me. You see, they didn't strike me off. They should have gone and struck me off and got rid of me. Back then, when the hysteria and the panic and the lies were real. But
now the thing is, if we look at it now, if we pull out and look at this AI onslaught that's coming our way, and the way that the game has been set, and part of that game is replacing doctors with AI, and it is turning it back on the doctors and saying, well, what were you doing? Isn't there this new ruling now that says the doctors are liable? I'm not sure.
The European Court of European Justice. Has actually stated that the doctors are responsible for. They say, you see, this is the sort of dichotomy or the contradiction. They say that doctors were not forced to give the vaccine; they had an option. But I think I'm a case in point where I am the proof that it was not voluntary.
No, it wasn't.
Now, and this is the truly crazy thing. I fell out with my Medical Protection Society. They refused to cover my legal costs because I wouldn't roll over and allow the Medical Council to scratch my belly. I refused. I continued to be me and say, no, I won't agree. I won't do this. I won't do that. I won't agree. And so I fell out. My Medical Protection Society withdrew on the grounds that the rules state that you follow legal advice.
Mm.
Legal advice was not the advice that I felt was best for me. And again, in retrospect, I was proven right. I was proven
Yeah.
right about everything. That in
And this is
effect,
the
the
thing.
legal advice I was getting was wrong.
It was wrong. And there was loads of people like myself who were searching for a doctor. Like, I was lucky I found one of the good guys, but we were searching for doctors like you because we didn't want it. We didn't want to sign up for it. But, people get sick. People still get sick. People still need doctors. We need antibiotics.
Yeah.
My God, we need antibiotics when the chips are down. So we still, there's a cohort out there that said we don't need them for anything, but no, I've been there I have 3 kids,
Yeah.
somebody gets a sore throat or, there's times you need a doctor for an ear infection, those things where you want the antibiotic.
Sorry, can I just make a point here? And this is very, very important. I've fallen out with medicine, or medicine have fallen out with me. I've been destroyed by the medical council. I've been destroyed. 99% of doctors in Ireland have in effect betrayed the people. They've betrayed their education. They've betrayed their families, their patients, and the people in general. But I still believe in conventional medicine. I still believe that the best medicine applied by honest, decent people is the only way forward. Now, just allow me, elucidate on that. We spend 6 years, 3 years in college. I spent them in UCG and 3 years in the regional hospital in Galway. And then a year's internship. It was a 7-year course. And what we learn in those 7 years is diagnostics. In other words, the ability to diagnose medical conditions. In the absence of that knowledge, you can do nothing. You've got to be able to diagnose illnesses. You've got to be able to differentiate the subtle differences between illnesses, where in effect, the interventions are going to be radically different. So I'm a great believer in the science of medicine, which is the education of it. Now, when you get to the stage of treating it, that's different. The actual therapeutics, the therapies are different, and the therapies differ. And there is place for many, many, many alternative therapies, perhaps. But you cannot enter into treatment unless you've got a correct diagnosis. Skin conditions, and that doesn't just apply to physical conditions, it also applies to psychiatric conditions and personality disorders and mental illnesses and that. As it happens, I did psychiatry. I worked in Grange Gorman and that. So I'm very, very aware of the need for proper diagnosis. Then, having gotten the diagnosis, then there are perhaps many different therapies and interventions and that. And that's where the art of medicine comes in. And this, you were mentioning AI. The problem with AI is that the AI will never be capable of assessing what a patient needs on a face-to-face basis. Because I've always said that 85% of things get better in spite of us. But that 15% you've got to know. And then you've got to differentiate between the sort of 10% to the 15% that actually need immediate intervention or just need reassurance or just need, there's 1,000 ways of dealing with people. People are so individual and so different that, that's where the art of medicine comes in. That's what makes a truly good doctor. But you've got to be a diagnostician. You've got to be able to diagnose your problem. And then you've got to be able to intervene. So, I'm still a believer. And that's what really kills me. That what my colleagues, what 99% of my colleagues have done, what the medical council have done. I am probably the classic example of being destroyed by my colleagues and by the medical profession. And I'm still a believer in the need for conventional medical education And then I've spent, see, this is the beauty of my life. I've spent 52 years in the business. And I've gone through phases where I've read up on chiropractors and chiropractic manipulation and alternative medicine and homeopathy. I've read it. I've got all the books. The books are all in my library behind me here. I've read it all. And at the end of the day, yeah, I don't know what the correct intervention and therapy is, but I sure as hell know what the correct diagnosis is required and how to get there. And you can only do that through the foundations of education. You've got to do your, your your chemistry, your biochemistry, your physics, your organic chemistry, right up through your genetics, your molecular biology. But you can't understand any of those unless you've done basic chemistry. So that's my little spiel, my sermon from the mount.
Well, and you're not alone. So we have Dr. Marcus de Bruin, your
Marcus is a
colleague.
good guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm talking to Marcus later tonight, actually, in a Zoom meeting.
So Marcus is going to be up before a fitness to practice hearing next month, and
Yeah,
where
the
he
10th, on the 10th of June, he's supposed to be up. Yeah, Marcus is a good guy, and Marcus is one of those people that came out very early and again suffered greatly from that. I was rather fortunate in that, believe it or not, in spite of all the shit that I've gone through, I don't consider myself in any way traumatized intellectually or emotionally by it. I'm actually quite happy and quite content with what happened to me.
How are you surviving? I mean, because your livelihood was taken away from you. All these years have passed. I know, like personally, it's been really hard few years. Because it's like it's literally pick up your cross and go. How are you surviving?
But you see, Aisling, what you're not taking into consideration that I was 70 at the time.
Okay. Yeah.
I was at a stage where, and I'm kind of good at making money. And I was good, not out of medicine, but out of investing.
Okay.
I invested very, very wisely after 2008 when the economy should have collapsed. I invested very, very wisely, and I made a lot of, I took on my own pensions and that, with the result that in 2020, I was independently wealthy, plus the fact that I can live on the clippings of tin. I don't, no, but I don't need anything. I don't play golf out in the K Club, or I don't play golf at all.
Yeah.
So, and I go down to Barn Hall Rugby Club and bum a couple of pints because invariably there's somebody down there I've stitched up and they buy me pints. If I hang around long enough, somebody will buy me a pint. No, but this is the beauty of it. I've got very, very simple tastes.
Yeah. Now, to Marcus de Bruin, I mean, if Marcus de Bruin hadn't resigned, I think he's done us a great favor. I think all the doctors who spoke up have done us a great favor, because you've really solidified the argument. And that's what we needed. We needed also the medical voices to solidify the argument. And now we just need to drive it home, collectively. But
it will be driven home. It definitely will be driven home.
And home again. Like, it has to be driven home a few times because people don't want to know about it. And there's people even saying the truth movement who don't want to talk about it. Like, so.
Yeah, that's natural. People made a huge mistake in taking the vaccine. The last thing they want is to be reminded of that. I don't blame them. But we cannot allow the medical profession off the hook. No. We cannot allow the medical council off the hook. We cannot allow the medical members of the medical council off the hook. They're the people who wouldn't look me in the eye. They were the people who wouldn't who wouldn't get into the ring with me, wouldn't get in and debate and discuss and tell me where I was wrong because they knew I wasn't wrong. These people will not be let off the hook.
No, they cannot be, because they could have killed. Well, they've killed, basically. I mean, this we're looking at genocide. We are looking at a genocide. That's the problem. And now I was watching Coronation Street last night, and the normalization of cancers and degenerative cognition issues. I mean, they are putting it into soaps now. they're trying to normalize sudden death in young people as well. Now, even in journalism, in the mainstream media, when they talk about young GAA athlete dying, they're mixing
Yeah,
it up with
yeah, that's
suicides.
almost normal. Yeah,
Yeah, and they don't mention how the person died. It's just they died. That just happens. And then they say it always happened when we know right well it. Yes, there were sudden deaths, but not at this rate.
yeah, but there was I remember a GAA player dying about 20 years ago, and it was kind of 2 days headline news on all the papers and RTE and that. And now it's happening, and it's not getting a column on the 5th page.
Hmm.
You
And they
know,
turn on you if you bring it up. How dare you even ask? How dare you even ask?
yeah,
Have you any morals? Leave the poor family alone.
yeah.
And
The
this was
concept
that.
that a bouncer at a nightclub or in a restaurant could ask whether you were vaccinated, and now if you ask somebody who has died whether they were vaccinated, you're the worst in the world.
I know. Now, you were saying earlier in the interview that you were good at managing the process of death, let's say, for your patients. And Marcus de Bruin, I think, did us all a great favor when he, on that iconoclast round table, talked about the giving out of midazolam in the nursing homes and the
Yeah,
fact that patients were put on do not resuscitate orders and their relatives were turned away. Then there were no autopsies, and you had these funerals where only a few people were allowed to show up. So really, really bad times. Can you just give us your take on what happened in the nursing homes, especially around April 2020?
well, I wasn't working in the
Mm,
hospital in the nursing homes. I gave up my nursing home work because it's rather arduous, and I in from about about the age of 65 on, I kind of stopped. I stopped going to nursing homes, so I wasn't working in nursing homes, but I do know what was going on, and I do know that they were putting "do not resuscitate" notices on patients, and I do know that. See, an awful lot was been driven by the PCR test, and if you had a positive PCR test, well, then that was in fact a death notice.
yeah.
That was a pre-death certification as a cause of death. So if you had a positive PCR test, and remember, the PCR test was a con and a hoax, that it was not showing the presence of a virus, an illness in your system. But if you got a positive one, though, a PCR test in a nursing home, you're as good as dead. Or in a hospital, because you were neglected to death. Now, you'd already been neglected. We as GPs were neglecting our patients by virtue of the fact that we weren't examining them. When I say we, I wasn't. I examined every patient that came to my surgery, face to face, without a mask. But that's what we were ordered to do, not to examine our patients, to send them home. And if you sent home enough upper respiratory tract infections, and they weren't getting exercise, they were sitting around in a room, getting depressed, getting worried, not breathing properly, not clearing their lungs, invariably a proportion of them are going to get a pneumonia. And that's what happened. And that's what
Well,
people
this
are dying.
lady got in touch with me and she told me a similar story. And her husband knew it was a hoax. He knew he knew it was a scam. And they had made a pact with each other. Don't let either of them get on the ventilator. Like that was the dreaded
Yeah,
ventilator. Anyway, as you were saying, he was trying to get to a GP because he'd got a chest infection and he was feeling very ill. Anyway, he kept being turned away. He tried calling numerous times. I think it was like 7 times he got turned away. It ended up getting really bad for him. Couldn't breathe. And when the ambulance crew arrived, they were really cross when they found out that they weren't vaccinated.
yeah,
And
yeah. The
yeah,
idiots, yeah, those idiots as well were as bad.
yeah, they really took it out on them. They saying, "Well, you're not vaccinated." Well, ventilator, and
Let's
it was
put it
kind
up
of the
to you.
threat. And the man was put on the ventilator, and end of life drugs, and as you say, it was a death sentence. I'm not sure. He must have been PCR'd if he went into the hospital. But that was because his GP had turned him away multiple times, and he wasn't put on the correct medication. I'm imagining maybe antibiotics, but maybe that's wrong.
Well, no, you're dead right. You're dead right. 80% of those people would have got, 90% of those people would have got better if they didn't put on an appropriate antibiotic, and perhaps a steroid, and perhaps an expectorant, and no, there's no doubt about it. But if those people had been treated appropriately, as I had done for the previous 40 years, none of them would have died. I had no deaths in my practice during 2020 from upper respiratory tract infections at all. None. And I didn't use ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, or any other special medications. I used nothing other than examining the patient and treating appropriately.
And what do you think of ivermectin? I mean, do you think that's some other?
I don't know about ivermectin, but I know that to claim that you've got a success rate for ivermectin based on the PCR test, you're starting off from the wrong place. How can you claim that you either got a death rate or a cure rate based on a PCR test which didn't diagnose the presence or absence of an infection at all?
Yeah.
So what about ivermectin now? I don't know. I just don't know whether ivermectin is a miracle drug. It may well be, and I don't care. All I'm saying is there was no need for it during 2020.
Yeah, well, as we saw at the end of 2020 then, and this was the incredible thing, because the mainstream media had to publicize it and say, well, actually, after all of that hullabaloo and the ticker tape on the news and everybody glued to their TV screens, no excess deaths apart from that peak in April 2020 when we saw what happened in the nursing homes. But that didn't.
That's right. Yeah, there was transfer of hospital patients into nursing homes, and I knew of one nursing home where 19 staff didn't turn in. Now, 19 staff was kind of half the staff for the nursing home, and they couldn't get agency staff, with the result that the people were just neglected in their beds. Of course, they died. Quite apart from the fact that they. I don't know what they were dishing out the midazolam and the morphine and that, both of which are respiratory depressants, both of which are contraindicated with any upper respiratory tract infection or lower respiratory tract infection. It was all crazy, and it was murder.
Gerry, how are we going to get justice, though, if the people don't want to know, if all the governing bodies are corrupted? How do we drive home the message, and how do we get justice for the people who've died and for the people who were conned into a dangerous medical trial?
Yeah, well, it wasn't a dangerous medical trial. It was, in effect, a deliberate euthanasia. It was a way of reducing world populations. That are the world population. It wasn't a medical trial. They knew exactly what the messenger RNA was going to do, and to presume that in fact there was any effort made to on the part of, say, Pfizer or Moderna or any of those, to presume that in effect they thought that it was a useful drug to counteract a deadly virus is delusional. They did not. They were quite content at working along the directives of the World Health Organization and the what do you call them, the Klaus Schwab's crowd.
Oh, the WEF, World Economic Forum.
World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt about it. But you saw Bill Gates, and there's no doubt about it. Bill Gates talked about reducing world population by 30% using vaccines.
He told us it's part of their religion. They have to tell us in advance.
There's oftentimes when you're talking to sort of psychopaths or narcissists, they actually tell you what they're going to do. They like the idea. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. Oh, I never do that. I would never do that. But in effect, when you look at them and you realize that's, they actually like they take an enjoyment out of telling you what they're going to do. That's a fairly obvious psychopathic trait that they like, and because they think you're so damn stupid.
They've been kind of right. They've been kind of right about the collective, in fairness. But for people who initially took them, and look, we've all been conned. Everybody's been conned in their lives, and you can understand. I can understand why people were conned.
Yeah.
I get it.
I
Yeah.
never blame a patient. Absolutely don't hang any blame on any patient for taking the vaccine once, twice, or three times. Now, when they start taking them sort of the fourth time or the fifth time or the sixth time, I kind of think, yeah, we got a problem here,
Yeah. There was an addiction issue, but say you took 3. I mean, is there a chance of that not working after a while, as in not working to kill you? Like, does it stop producing? Is the spike protein thing a thing?
No,
Like,
that's the problem. That is the problem. We don't know. All I can say is, and I keep saying this to people. Remember, people say to me, Gerry, but I took 2 or 3 of these, or 1 or 2 of them, and say, am I doomed? I say, absolutely not. Remember that if you think back, there was a great rush. Like, billions of these vaccines were made. There was the production methods were very, very short of ideal. There was no quality control. And then initially they were saying they had to be administered at minus 72 degrees or something
yeah,
like
remember
that.
that? Yeah.
Right. So, and that was dropped. So I would presume that both in the manufacture and the administration of these vaccines, they were all higgly-piggly in that. And I just hope, and I hope that the active ingredient, namely the messenger RNA, was denatured in the vaccine before, either in the factory where nobody cared about quality control, or in the administration where the doctors were so anxious to get their 62 euros or whatever it was that they didn't care. They were like, I remember hearing down in Wexford, people going into pubs. Nurses were going into pubs and bringing people across to doctors' surgeries to jab them with this 62 euro bounty. So that, I just hope that both in the administration and in the manufacture, there were enough cock-ups such that the active ingredient didn't get into people, such that not as many people will die as some people projected.
Yeah, which is worrying. I mean, I was saying about the 22,500 the other day on X, which is the only number we know. We know that the Irish Times bought RIP.ie, so there could be a stalling. It's probably more, I would say, but still, that is the safe enough estimate for now.
I suppose my humanitarian in me says, let's hope that the longer we go away from it, the less deaths will occur. Let's, as a humanitarian, I want to believe that we will, that the adverse side effects will get less, that the spike proteins, that the lipid nanoparticles, that the autoimmune conditions will. And I suppose I'd have faith in the human body, in this mammal that we are, that it will have an ability to heal itself, a bit like the earth. The earth has a massive ability to heal itself. And I just hope that mankind as a species has the ability to heal itself and get over this unbelievable assault on the part of fundamentally our leaders.
We can blame everybody, but I suppose ultimately there were an awful lot of warning signs. I mean, it really was a moral test. I mean, especially for the doctors, it was like a soul. It was like a soul test. The whole thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You had so many opportunities not to partake.
Isn't it sad to think that 90% or 98, 99% of them failed it here in Ireland or in England, Scotland, Wales, America? Like 99% of the GPs failed that test.
Yeah, it was like Noah's Ark, really. It was like a weird biblical testing
Yeah, I hadn't
system.
thought of it that way, but I can see.
I thought it was so weird that so few. So, I mean, I just thought it was going to be loads of people because it was the obvious one. It was so obvious to be the one to charge into battle. Now, listen, I've kept you for an hour at least now, so I better let you go. Before I do,
it's been a privilege. Well, in fact, this hasn't been an interview. This has been a chat. This has been a fireside chat, hasn't it?
It has, and it's so interesting. It's brilliant. Thank you so much for talking to me. But before I leave you, I mean, what are you going to do about it? I mean, these guys have been on your back. I mean, the injustice of the whole thing, you're vindicated. All the facts are on your side, but how do you win? You know, how do you officially?
I can assure you, Aisling, I'm not going to let it go. And I have a plan. I've got some brilliant legal minds from around the world. Australia, Canada, Europe, Britain, and Ireland. I've got some 5 or 6 brilliant legal minds who've made contact with me, have reached out to me and said, Gerry, we want to help you. But a lot of them are kind of still have jobs and want to continue on. And, like, one I can mention is Una McGurk is a good friend of mine. So that, these people are on the end of the phone if and when I need legal advice. But I can assure you, I do have a plan, and I do have I am working along a program that has, just takes its time, and I can assure you, there will be accountability. Okay. There will be accountability. From my point of view, I'm only one person. Now, I am kind of a bastard as well, in the sense that, as my wife says, I would hate you as an enemy.
Well, you're very lucky to have Una McGurk on board, because she did a great job, I have to say, with our kind of COVID inquiry, which was worth doing. And I think just to get the Roy Butler story
Una's a great person, and like as I say, I do have contact with a lot of really good legal brains, and as I say, from Canada and Australia and Britain and around the world, so that every now and again these people sort of pop up, and I make a phone call, and these people chat to me for an hour and a half, and we'll run ideas by one another. And that, yes, I do have a plan, and it's probably best kept close to my chest at this point in time.
Okay, so just watch yourself crossing the road, watch your back, and all of that. And great talking to you, and keep us posted on any developments.
If they get me, they get me.
We'll know. All right. Thank you, Gerry. Dr. Waters.
Thanks very much,
I'll always call you
Ashley.
Dr. Waters. Thank you.
Really.